So great to be back at UVM. It's always great. I really love this place. Can't say enough about how special and wonderful UVM is to me personally. I also want to say a really quick one shout out to Kara, because Kara, I mean, you're right. I mean, we met such a long time ago, and I have watched I have watched you, Kara, as how you've been the powerhouse behind the evolution of this integrative health program now for so many years, and to see you now in this role, it's just fantastic. So thank you, thank you. I'm going to be talking about some of what we're doing at NCCIH on the area of whole person and planet health. And Christine just gave me the perfect introduction here, pretty much touched on just about every point I want to make. So thank you. So let's first talk about human health. And this little cartoon sort of depicts the kind of the difference in how we think about health versus disease, right? Because when you think about health, health is a whole person thing that we feel, that we experience, as opposed to diseases that sort of we tend to think about diseases of your heart or diseases of your muscles or your bones or whatever in a compartmentalized way. But when we think about health, we really think about the health of the whole person. And we also know that there are factors that are, for example, stress or poor sleep or an unhealthy diet or lack of exercise that impact a whole variety of diseases. Pretty much all the major chronic non-communicable diseases, as we call them: diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, even depression, musculoskeletal problems. All of these issues are, they are, I say caused, but predisposed to by all of these sort of lifestyle factors. So we know that by intervening and helping people to improve their self-care, for example, to improve their lifestyle, it can have a tremendous impact. And the other aspect that I want to point out is the top of the picture here, that the progression between less healthy, less healthy, and disease does not only all go in one direction. There are opportunities, right, to restore health, especially when interventions are made at an early stage. But this is something that we really need to understand a lot better. We spend a lot more time in research understanding what we call pathogenesis, which is the creation of disease, than we do studying what we call salutogenesis, which is the creation of health, making the arrow and helping the arrow point in the other direction. How do we best support that? So a lot of this, of course, doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? We know that life throws us curveballs, right? We all have challenges that happen to us, stresses, things that are beyond our control. And this is why the concept of resilience is so important in understanding health. At NIH, we have a trans NIH working group that has working very, very hard for many years now to come at a definition, a working definition of resilience that we can use in research. And the way we define resilience is the ability to resist, recover, adapt, or grow from a challenge. And this can span all the way from, the way that cells, for example, can adapt to fight something like oxidative stress, to the way people can adapt following, say, the death of a loved one. So there's this whole spectrum of resilience that spans from the physiological to the psychological, and that is really a continuum of resilience that we feel that we really need to understand this better in order to understand health. Now, when it comes to our planet, it's really not that different. When our planet was born, it had no idea that it was going to encounter this enormous challenge that is us, right? And really, we are the most dangerous things that have happened really to the planet, or one of the most dangerous things. There's a lot of things that have happened to this planet since it started. But certainly now the threat that's posed by our species, our human species to the Earth is significant. And the two pictures that are represented here. On the left is our beautiful planet. And on the right is not the Earth. It's actually an exoplanet from a different galaxy. And the sun of this planet is not as nice and stable as ours. It has wide fluctuations in energy. And for that reason, that planet is not healthy. And I've put that, and it wouldn't sustain life. I've put this picture to remind us that this is how the Earth might look like in the future if we don't take better care of it. And we, of course, know some of the things. This is not an exhaustive list of the problems that are causing our planet to experience stress right now. But some of them have to do with our use of fossil fuels, of our land management, cutting down forests, our agricultural practices. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about about agriculture in a minute. And we also know a lot of the solutions. We know that we need to do a lot of these things. We need to change how we eat, how we grow our food, how we use our energy, and how we manage our waste. The problem is that's hard to do. It requires a concerted effort, and that's why I'm going to evoke some of the themes that Molly Kawahata kind of so nicely kind of developed yesterday in her talk about developing not only a collective sense of hope that we can do something about this, but also a collective agency in working together to solve this. This is why I'm so excited to see this effort kind of coming together here at UVM, which I cannot think of a better place for a nidus of collective hope to come from. So here is just a cartoon depicting this kind of complex, multi-scale network that we are a part of. This network extends from the whole planet and all the way down to the individual organs and systems and molecules that compose our bodies. But we are part of this, and every part of this system is dependent on the other parts. So I'm going to use the example of nutrition to illustrate some of the things that we can observe and also can do in order to address what we call the nutrition continuum. And so if we go from left to right, starting from how our food is produced and grows, to how we are actually consuming the food, how we prepare the food, how we eat it, and what's on the plate, the actual things that we eat, the individual components of the food, and then down to the actual ingredients, and further down into the molecules that compose the foods that we now digest and absorb. Now, of course, there's a dark side to this nutritional continuum. If you look at the top row, we can see that very often our agricultural practices are just simply appalling. That there's areas of many areas in the country where people do not have access to foods, to fresh foods, that they get their food from a convenience store or even a gas station. That fast food has become now such a pervasive way to eat that very often people will grow up in families where food is not cooked in the home. And so people grow up without the knowledge of how to cook food. The food is very much geared towards this quick consumption, and also this ultra-processed additives to the food are making the foods even more addictive. And so food can become a problem. There's this kind of compulsive and craving that surrounds the foods that we eat, that perpetuates a cycle of unhealthy eating. And finally, and I think this is an area where we don't talk about this enough, dietary supplements are in such abundance, so easy to obtain. Very often, they are actually used instead of food to get nutrition. And we think this is an area that really needs a lot more attention, because it is really a big problem in this country and worldwide. So let's look at an example of a compound that we all hear a lot about, flavonoids, right? So this is an example of these molecules that are called antioxidants, right? We hear about this, right? We said, we should have, grapes or red wine or chocolate, right? So a lot of these types of foods have these types of compounds in them. So it's very interesting when you think and when you look at what these compounds do. At both ends of the spectrum, they seem to be related to resilience in a very interesting way. So a plant, right, when it grows in soil that is exposed to the sort of the vagaries of the weather, right? There are times when there's more water, less water. If a plant is exposed to, say, for example, a week of drought, right, what it will do is it will increase the synthesis of these flavonoids to help it deal with the temporary stress of the environment. This is actually a healthy thing that the plant can do. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, you can see that the same molecules are associated with, in humans, similar benefits in order to have healthy vascular function, immune function, lipid metabolism, and it can even be helpful in aging. We observe this in, say, population studies in people who consume lots of like fruit and vegetables, for example, that they tend to have better immune function, et cetera. So, but how does this actually happen, right, is something that we need to understand better. And here's another very interesting piece of this. So we know that the microbes that are in the soil, right, are essential for the plant to actually metabolize and create these flavonoids that will then help the plant have resistance. And if we go to the end of the spectrum in us, the microbes that are in our gut also play a very important role in helping us break down some of these polyphenols that are too large for us to be able to utilize. And then these smaller molecules are able to go to our brains, for example, and other parts of our body in order to help us to be healthier. So you can see here now already there's another layer to this, right? It's not only that these molecules can have an effect across the nutrition continuum, but they also interact with the microbiome of both the planet and us. So you see there's a very, very interesting connection there. Now, I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into these flavonoids and antioxidants, because this is an area where I think there has been a lot of confusion. There is a phenomenon called hormesis, which is something that we have known about for over 100 years. Yet we have not paid enough attention to this because it's a complicated phenomenon. And I'm going to explain to you a little bit what hormesis is. Typically, if you look at the two diagrams at the top here, when we look at what we call the dose response, right, of something, it doesn't matter what it is, a chemical or even something like ionizing radiation or another stress in the environment, we usually think of the dose response as being either linear on the right, so that the more of the stimulus, the more the response, or on the next to it, I don't know if I can see if I can use this pointer over here. There we go. That there's a threshold, so that you have no effect up until a certain point, and then all of a sudden you start getting an effect. And these are the two types of dose response curves that people are used to looking at. Now, if you look at the two dose response curves on the bottom, they look a little bit weird, more weird. So they are biphasic, right? And so at the lower end, you have an effect that goes in either one direction. So in this case, you would have inhibition here. And then you pass a point of like kind of inflection point, and then you have excitation or stimulation. And then on the right, you have the opposite effect. You have inhibition at the lower end and excitation at the higher end. What that means is that this is a nonlinear dose response that is observed in nature across the board. But usually what happens is we miss the lower end because either we don't look at it, or it's not, these effects are kind of easy to miss because they're not high in amplitude. Typically, these lower dose effects are between 30 to 50% of change, which is not a lot, compared with the higher dose effects, which could be 3, 4, 10-fold, right? So when we do our experiments using dietary supplements, for example, and we look at the effects on immune function, whatever, we tend to use the higher doses because, first of all, you get cleaner experiments that way. You have to use fewer replicates, and you get effects that are sort of probably more reproducible. So most of the research that we do, in a lot of this on vitamins, supplements, all of that they're all done at that higher dose. So I'm going to show you a very, very interesting paper that where they bothered to actually look at the lower dose. And as you can see, the data are sort of not very, they look like they're kind of confusing at first. But if you bear with me, so first look at the blue dots here. You can see that this is the effect of resveratrol, which is a flavonoid, right, on cell viability. So this isn't a dish. These are cells to see how healthy are the cells. And you can see that when you give increasing doses of this resveratrol, there's a little bit of a bump in viability. It goes up to 125%, not a lot. And then it comes down, but look how it dramatically falls after about 100 micromolar down here on the right-hand side. And what that suggests is that higher doses of resveratrol is actually not that great for these cells, right? Now, what happens at the lower doses? Well, if you inhibit the yellow signs here, if you give the glutathione, which is an antioxidant, you nullify the effect. What does that mean? Does that mean that the resveratrol was actually an oxidant? And that's the opposite of what you would think, right? Then they looked at an effect here of this enzyme, catalase. And catalase is an antioxidant enzyme that the body produces. And they saw that it was increased, but only at the lower dose. So their hypothesis was that resveratrol was actually an oxidant, not an antioxidant. So they tested that. So the next experiment, you can see up in the upper right, they did very careful replicates. And they looked at the effect of resveratrol over time. And you can see that there's a bump in the reaction of the production of what we call reactive oxygen species. This is oxidation, not antioxidation. And then at the bottom in the blue bars, they looked at genes that were produced to produce the body's own antioxidant response. What that means is that the resveratrol was actually causing a mild stress, and the cell was responding to that stress by becoming more resilient to the stress. That's what was happening. So in this paper, what they're proposing is that this resveratrol is actually having a very different kind of effect than what we normally think. It's a hormetic effect, and it occurs only at the lower dose, and it is an effect that actually helps the body boost its own redox environment to shift towards an antioxidant state, but by itself. It's not the resveratrol that's doing it. It's the body that's doing it. That's the main difference. And by doing that, it makes the cells more resilient to future insults, future stresses. So this is still a theory that's in the middle of being tested, but we think at NCCIH, we think this is extremely important. And we think that we really have to really rethink how we think about research on dietary supplements and especially antioxidants for that reason. So, okay, so here's the question. How can we build resilience across the nutritional continuum, right? I've already hinted at that, right? One thing I talked about is better understanding the effects of molecules as they interact with our bodies, in our environment, in an environment. But let's talk about the soil for a minute. So talk about soil health. This is a very, very important piece of this, because I already hinted at the importance of the microbes in the soil. But let's talk about carbon, because we all know the problem we're having with carbon right now. There's too much carbon in the atmosphere. Part of that is because it's being produced by burning fossil fuels. We all know this. But another really, really important source of carbon in the atmosphere comes from the soil itself, surprisingly. So what happens is we know that plants, when they are during the day, they are able to produce, to take carbon from the atmosphere and fix it through photosynthesis, right? And then they produce oxygen. That's great. And then the carbon becomes the plant, right? It helps to build the molecules that the plant is made of. And then part of that is at the end of the plant's life, when the plant dies, it essentially decomposes, and this carbon goes back into the soil. And so the soil is a source of, is a great way to fix the carbon that the plant produces in response to this photosynthesis. But then there's also this other opposite effect, which is what respiration, in a sense, is that both the plants and also the soil, they breathe also, and they exhale carbon dioxide. And so there's the production and the fixation of carbon dioxide and also the respiration act in kind of concert. But the important thing to realize is that the ratio of fixation of carbon when the soil is and the plants are healthy is about double. You actually fix more carbon than you breathe out. So it's a net positive gain. But if the soil is unhealthy, if the soil is unable to hang on to this carbon because of the overuse of fertilizers, the loss of carbon from the soil is greatly increased. And if you look at the ratio, normally the amount of carbon that is exhaled from the soil is 10 times greater than what we use in fossil fuel, what fossil fuels contribute. But you can see that by manipulate this, and you can have a big impact, right? And so working on the soil could really help us to counteract some of the effects of, not to say that we shouldn't be, that we should continue burning the fossil fuels, absolutely not. But by working on the soil and preventing the excessive loss of carbon through the soil, we can greatly, greatly reduce what's going on right now in terms of the global warming. So this is an area that I think places, for example, like University of Vermont, that has an agricultural college, that is in a state, which is a rural state, where a lot of agriculture takes place. I cannot think of a better place for an ecologically minded, planetary conscious faculty and group of individuals who want to put their energies to this. I can't think of a better place to actually make some of this happen. So I see Dr. Prilak here. I know this is your vision. I know that you have really looked at this and can see it. And I'm really so excited and applaud you so much for having that incredible vision, because I think this is the place where it could happen. Now, another thing is teaching kitchens. So I mentioned about food literacy. This is extremely important. If people don't know how to cook, they're not going to know what to do with the produce, that even if they have access to it. And so this is a movement that is going on in a lot of places in the country. There is a program, a teaching kitchen at the Veterans Administration program in the VA that is very strong. We're teaching veterans, how to cook. There's also the Teaching Kitchens Collaborative, which is a wonderful nationwide, it's actually international now, that was started by Dr. David Eisenberg, who was the Osher Center director at Harvard before me. And so now he leads this really wonderful teaching kitchen collaborative where they put kitchens in schools, in churches, in community centers, to teach people how to cook. It sounds simple, but the nice thing about it is that they use this opportunity, once they have people in the kitchen, to talk not just about food, but about physical activity and stress management, right? Because it all goes hand in hand. It's all part of healthy lifestyle. And so this teaching kitchen piece is extremely nice. So again, I really emphasize now the continuum, right? That regenerative agriculture practices and food literacy can strengthen, right, our connections and our understanding of the connection between the planet, the soil, and people, and the health of all of that. Now, we all know this, right? And this is something that we need to not just acknowledge, but emphasize, that changing behavior is difficult to do in a sustained way. It's hard. How do we help that? And I want to just draw attention to this phenomenon, which I think is quite remarkable. It's called the overview effect. And the fact that when people go out in space, and we've known this now, people have done interviews of astronauts and people who've experienced seeing the Earth from afar, There's a universal sort of understanding. People come back to the earth changed. They're different. They understand better not only our connection, the person, individual connection to the earth, but there's almost a spiritual kind of what we call this a quantum effect, something that happens instantly. Thank you, and also that lasts. And we've known that these types of experiences, we call them mystical experiences, have been described for millennia. They're a part of every religious tradition that there is. And so what is going on, during those? Well, we also know that we can have insights and experiences, and Christine talked about the spirit, and and you described it very nicely. Just being outside, looking at the sky, looking at the being in a forest, etc., being on top of a mountain, and that is a way to experience oneness with nature. And of course, meditation is also a way to experience this kind of connection with other. And this is just an interesting description of changes that people have described during meditation. So one is, you can see attention regulation, body awareness, emotion. But look at the bottom, change in perspective on the self. And this is important. This is something that can help us understand how contemplative practices can really help us not only understand that we all are connected. And so that on the left, I've put here, kind of our what we would describe a feeling that is just beyond the mind and the body and the spirit. That's sort of the whole connection and sense of wholeness, of meaning and purpose, as opposed to being isolated, being lonely. And we talk about the deaths of despair that people experience. There's a real phenomenon going on, a lot of suicides, a lot of depression, and a hopelessness. And this is why, yesterday's talk on hope is so important. I think it really belongs right in there. I want to just say a quick word about indigenous communities, Native Americans. I'm so glad that we opened the meeting with acknowledgement of this. The Native cultures that are land-based cultures that understand the spiritual connection to the land actually suffer the most from the damage that's being done to the environment, because they understand it's part of their religious and spiritual life. Their connection to the animals, to the plants, to the earth itself, is so strong. And so I just want to point a program that I'm very, very excited about at the NIH. It's part of the NIH HEAL initiative, and it is called NCREW. It's Native Collective Efforts to Enhance Wellness. We dedicated $268 million over 7 years to put research in the hands of the Native American communities, and to design research projects that they are actually in charge of, that they can self-direct the purpose and the research studies. Right now, it's really more emphasizing pain and substance use, but we think that this is a model that could be used. And a lot of these studies are actually, they're nominally to address substance use, but they're really about whole person health. And this is kind of, that's what we're hearing from the communities themselves. That's what they want to do. So we're very excited about that. And I want to just in closing, draw your, if any of you have not yet seen this extraordinary movie this is the latest movie by Ken Burns on the American buffalo. It's about returning buffalo herds to the Great Plains. Buffaloes are the animals that were spiritually the most important animal in Native American culture. And the fact that they were completely decimated to the point of being almost extinct. And they're now the herds are being restored. And interestingly enough, because the genetic pool had been so much crossbred with cattle in the West, they had to take a pair of buffalo from the Bronx Zoo that was actually genetically pure, and they put these animals back in the out west, and they started breeding, and now they have herds that are thousands of animals that the American Indians are managing themselves. And they are using these animals in the traditional way to hunt them and produce food for them. You can imagine how much meat a buffalo can yield and feed a family for the whole winter. This is how these types of cultures are being restored again, that are so important, connects food again with spirit and with the culture of the tribes. I think this is a really exciting program that really I think is long overdue, obviously. So just to kind of put things together, I think it's really clear that there is a connection, right, across all of these things, that the cure to our collective, despair, chronic diseases, unhealthy lifestyle is so linked to our problems that we have with our soil, our biodiversity, our environment, and our climate. And so the solutions are clearly linked. And this is why I think a program like the University of Vermont is starting is so brilliant. I also want to say that research is going to be so important here. We need to understand how to measure all of this. We have started at NCCIH on really focusing on resilience, because we think that once we can measure it, this is how we can demonstrate the success of the interventions that we are implementing. So we had a workshop just last month and on advancing the biomedical science of resilience, measures and metrics. It was a fantastic workshop. There's going to be a summary and recommendations as to what methods to use. This is something that the community, I think, will greatly benefit from in designing future studies that involve resilience at any level of this spectrum. And I also want to finish by just stating our definition our working definition of whole person health at NCCIH is empowering individuals, families, communities, and populations, and we've added now the planet here, to improve their health in multiple interconnected domains, so biological, behavioral, social, environment, and we've also added spiritual because we really feel it's an important part of this. So if I really encourage you to connect with us, follow us on social media, and check our website, because we have a lot of exciting new initiatives that we're going to be rolling out, and a lot of materials that I think are going to be very hopefully helpful to you all. So thank you.